What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we got some very fun, very exciting stuff to do to the truck. So as you know, we did a lot of dash work on the last one. We got the heater box, all that good to go. I was waiting for some parts and I had a little bit of homework to do on what we're doing for this radio bezel. So I think I got it figured out. I think we're going carbon fiber. So I've never done carbon fiber before. I've done a little bit of fiberglassing, but I've never like made a mold and built like a part from scratch. So it's gonna be a first time for making a mold. We're gonna make the mold out of like a cardboard, something, foam. I'm not sure exactly what the mold's gonna be made of yet. And then we're gonna fiberglass over the mold to get another mold that's actually out of fiberglass, something we can make perfect, and then we're gonna carbon over that mold. So it's kind of a process, but it's gonna be a one-off piece, and I think it's really gonna look good. So what I think I'm gonna start with is I'm gonna try to make this little mold out of cardboard and then just use like packing tape over it so that we can actually put our epoxy on it and then do, you know, our fiberglass over the top of that. So I've seen people do it that way. I think for what we have to build, the cardboard is going to be the easiest way. So let's get some cardboard out, get some cut up. I'll show you guys right now what we're doing. So if you missed the last video, I'll explain it real quick. So this is the stock bezel right here. You can see it's got a singled in cutout, and then it's got the heater controls up here. So I moved the heater controls down here. I made this little pod for it right here, welded it in. So we basically have to remake this, and with an opening that'll fit, you know, a double din, and it's also kind of curved. You can see it's not flat, so we're gonna have to make it completely flat. And then there is the windshield wipers and the heater fan switches here, so we'll have to move those over maybe on the side somewhere. I don't know, something. We'll figure that out later, but we need to basically replicate this piece out of cardboard, then fiberglass, and then carbon fiber. So let's get some cardboard out and see what we can come up with. Alright guys, I'm already confusing myself. So I basically made this to go on top of this, and my plan was to, you know, do our mold off the bottom of it. Now when I put it up here onto the actual dash, you can see I want it butted up right in that line down there. You can see we're about a ½ inch too short, and that line, you can see there I marked, and then I marked that line. It's about a ½ inch too narrow too. So I'm just gonna scratch the whole idea of trying to make it based off of this. I'm just gonna measure, you know, off the actual dash itself. And like I said, I think we'll have to make the mold actually off the backside of this little template here, because you can see it is a double walled cardboard. So it is pretty thick, which is good because it's stiff, but we got to keep in mind of our clearances when we're doing the actual mold. So I'm just going to start redoing this based off of the measurements here instead of this piece here. All right, we got that made up about where we need it. And also I'm gonna do like a little 1/4 inch flange, just like the stock one was, around the whole outside. So what I'm planning on doing is just gluing this on and kind of bending it around that curve there. But what I want to do first is take it all apart, and I just got some clear packing tape right here. Like I said, we're gonna tape around the whole outside of it just so the epoxy resin doesn't mess up the cardboard and make it all mushy. So let's tear it all apart, get it taped up, get it back together, and then find some way to glue this thing on here and curve around that corner. All right, guys, this is what we got. So I got it glued to a box. Now, if you're thinking like me, how I'm gonna do this with at least carbon fiber, it doesn't matter about the fiberglass, but carbon fiber with all these corners and edges and with this little flanger on the outside and make it look good, well, I really don't know. So we're gonna do what we can. Hopefully it will turn out okay. So what we have is partial paste. This is, you want to put that on the mold right now, and then a couple coats of that. It's basically a wax, and then they say to put this PVA over the top of that, just so when we get the fiberglass on and it's cured up, that we can pop it off. It doesn't actually stick to the mold. So that is the game plan. We're going to do some wax, some PVA release film, and then this is a fiberglass I got, just some fiberglass mat, some fiberglass resin here. So we'll probably do, I don't know, I'll probably do 3 coats of the mat just to make sure that it's going to be strong enough and doesn't want to twist and bend when I'm trying to do the carbon fiber on top of that. So let's bust this stuff out and see what we can do. Well, that was kind of a nightmare. I got 2 layers of the fiberglass on here. The first layer, I was having a really hard time. I guess my corners are way too tight, and I should have brought that flange out more. I was having a lot of trouble keeping the fiberglass in that inside corner. But second coat, I let it tack up, and then the mat just kind of stuck onto the resin after it kind of got tacky, and it's working a lot better for the second coat. So I think I'm just going to leave 2 on there. I'm going to peel it off the cardboard, and if it does need one more coat, we can do it, but I think I'm going to leave it for now. I don't want to put too much on here. But honestly, with this heavier mat, I think this is like 6-ounce mat. It's probably going to be strong enough just for a form with 2 layers. So we'll get out here tomorrow, let this cure overnight. We'll get out here tomorrow and crack this thing off of the cardboard. Hopefully it comes off easily, and we'll see how strong it is. All right, it is now the next day, and this stuff is nice and hardened up. We're gonna try to peel this off, but before we do that, a couple things. So in the last video I put up, I had a question on the throttle pedal on the truck. It was super weird, the linkage wasn't right, and I think some of you guys nailed it with that lower bracket it needs to be flipped around. So we're gonna do that. And then one more thing, guys, don't fall for these freaking scams on my YouTube. Even the name is a dead giveaway. The name's like inbox me on Telegram with my name, and then I think it's the same profile picture, but it's got a wacky name. I don't know why you guys are falling for it. These scams are everywhere, guys. Don't fall for it. It seems like everything is a scam in this world, including our president. It's just mind-boggling. Guys, don't fall for these scams. Anyway, let's get back to work. Let's flip this throttle pedal around, and then let's try to rip off that form or that mold off of that cardboard. check it out. We are working like a champ, guys. Thanks for the help on that one. Now, let's go see if we can get this mold off this cardboard here. Well, there it is. It turned out okay, I guess. There's definitely some of these corners where I was having trouble getting the fiberglass to lay into. It's not very smooth. So what I'm going to do is, you can see the line where that flange should be. I'm going to go around and cut all that out right now, and then I'll probably try to sand and kind of feather out these edges a little bit. And then you can see there was a light spot. It was kind of an air bubble, I guess, along this bottom edge. I am going to just mix up some epoxy. I have this stuff called bezel. It's basically just a thickening agent. So I'm going to mix some of that up. It gets it nice and thick so you can actually spread it on a little bit thicker. And I'm just going to coat the whole thing. Once that's done, I'm going to sand all that smooth. And hopefully by that point, we should be close enough for some carbon fiber. You can also see that well, maybe you can see along this back here, you can see actually the cardboard where it's kind of has ridges in it. It transferred over right into that. So I want to get all that smooth. You don't want to see any of that imperfections in the carbon fiber. Look at what showed up. So we got the head unit in. Now this is a new one from a Toto. This thing is probably 2 inches deep, which is going to be super nice. The cool thing about that is there's so much room behind it. And also it did come with a set of brackets. You probably could, well, I guess there's not much mounting, so we are gonna have to use these brackets. It came with everything. These stereos usually come with GPS antenna, the microphone, all the wiring, adapters. It's got some converters. They also sent over a backup camera, so super stoked about that. Now today's video is sponsored by a Toto. They sent over this stuff for me to throw in the truck. Unfortunately, the cab is still completely stripped, so we don't have any wiring. We can't hook this thing up yet, but we can get it mounted. We do have to build all the brackets for the mount to actually mount it into the dash. So we can get all that done. Once we get this truck kind of back together with the wiring in, then we can wire the radio up and try it out. Show you guys all the cool features this thing has when we get to that point. Now I'm sure a lot of you are curious because I have this, not the same exact model, but the Toto I have in this truck, and I gotta say it has been perfect. I haven't had a single glitch. It has been amazing. Very happy with how that thing is working. I'm sure this one is gonna work just as good. Now if you want to go save yourself some money on one of these head units, I got all the links in the description. Also a link for that backup camera. Now at checkout, type in the code ATOTO US6. That will save you some money on checkout. Now these are a little bit cheaper than the head unit I have in that green truck. I think that one was around $400. This one is $220, so a lot cheaper. Now I did talk to a Toto about the kind of differences between the higher end one and this one, and they said they're honestly not that much different. The software is pretty much the same, and both kind of share the same features. So really getting a touchscreen head unit with navigation, everything on it for 220 bucks, you can't beat it. Go check out the link in the description. Well, let's get back to work. We got to cut the hole for the radio, and then we got to get our epoxy on, another coat, coat, get it all smoothed out and ready for the carbon. Well, I decided I'm not even gonna bother cutting this hole in this right here, just because it's probably gonna be easier to lay our carbon fiber without a big gaping hole in the center, and it's probably gonna end up being a lot flatter and straighter when we're done with our carbon fiber. So I'm not worried about it right now. Let's go through, give this whole thing a scuff, and then we'll mix up some, like I said, some resin with some of this Cabasil, and we'll just go through and coat the whole thing, give it a nice thick coat, maybe even 2 depending on how it's looking. And then once that dries up, we should be able to sand this thing nice and flat, and at that point it should be ready for carbon. We are ready to start our carbon fiber. So we got the paste on, we got the PVA on, we're letting that dry up. This is the carbon I have. If you're curious, it's a 3K 2x2 twill weave carbon. So we're gonna get this cut out, cut some sections out. I think I'm gonna shoot for 4 layers. That seems to be what most people do. And also what they say with this carbon fiber is it's only strong in one direction. So you wanna cut some sections that run this way, and then I think cut some that run at a 45. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna unroll this a little bit, cut some out at a 45, and then just alternate 45, 90, 45, 90, and hopefully we can get this stuff to lay out. Now, one thing I did do to hopefully get these corners to lay out better is, you guys saw me take the thickened epoxy and ran it with one of these sticks here. So you can see it's got a nice round on it. So I ran that. So it's got a nice kind of a gradual bend, not a sharp corner. So the carbon should kind of roll into that a little bit better. Also, one other thing I'm going to do is put the epoxy on the form here, and then I'm going to let that tack up and then put my carbon onto that so it actually sticks, and I don't have to sit there and mess with it for a half hour just to get the carbon to stay on the first layer. And then, like I said, each other layer I'm going to let tack up just a little bit. I don't think you want to let it tack up too much, but a little bit of tack just to hold it in place. So let's get some carbon cut up, and hopefully, like I said, hopefully this thing turns out. I'm ready, what, 3 days I think into this. It takes so much time letting everything harden, letting everything cure, and then go through, sand it, more layers. I'm hoping it turns out and I didn't waste 3 days of work. Well, some of you might be cringing right now at what I got going on. So I actually wanted to throw that on just before that resin kind of went to its tacky state, just because it's all inset. So if I put the fiber on there, it's going to stick to all the edges and I'm not going to be able to get the bottom flat. So it's still a little bit wet, but these edges are kind of wanting to fold up. So I got some cardboard holding it down just until it gets tacky, and then I'm going to go through and wet out the whole fiber, let that tack up a little bit, and then do 3 more layers. So I'm actually really surprised at how this thing laid out in the corners. This one, you can see it pulled the fibers just a little bit, but this is the first layer and this is the back side. So really what we need to worry about is our last layer on top, because this is the front. So we need to make sure, good thing we got 3 layers to practice with to get this stuff to lay out perfect. All right, we got this thing off the mold finally, and it pretty much destroyed it. So I think what happened was, why it was so stuck, even with the wax, is because I sanded it smooth and I didn't really polish it. What I've seen people do is if they gotta sand it, they go through and polish it after, so it's not a nice slick surface. And well, you can see pretty much bonded to the epoxy on that mold there. So I'm gonna have to grind all that off. But either way, what we gotta do now is I'm gonna cut it out around the outside, and then we got to sand this out with like 120 grit, flatten that out, and then we're going to do 3 more coats of the epoxy on top of that, get a nice flat, level, smooth surface, and then a final sand, and then 1 more coat of epoxy. So that is the game plan. Then we also have to cut our hole in for that radio. Now, cutting this carbon fiber is really not that great for your health. The fibers are so small, they sit in the air for a long time. Even after a while and you take your respirator off, there's still those fibers in the air. So I'm actually going to bring this thing outside and do all my cutting outside. All right, we got it cut up and fitting. Now, it's fitting good, but not as good as I thought it would. I was hoping for a little bit of overlap over the top of that edge right there, but you can see the radius isn't quite there. It doesn't quite have the right bend to it, so I'm not sure what happened there. But all in all, if I can keep it up here and not break it, it fits pretty good for a first time. So I'm happy with it. Let's get this thing sanded out and get a few more coats on it, get it nice and flat, and see what kind of gloss we can get out of it. Well, we got 2 coats on and a slight little issue here. See if I can get it on camera. We got some fish eyes, so it's not that bad, but I think what I'm gonna do, this is 2 coats on here. I think what I'm gonna do is just let this cure up, get till tomorrow, and then I'm just gonna come through and sand it flat, make sure it is absolutely clean this time. The first coat went down fine. As the second coat, I brought my car in here. I took my truck out and brought my car in, and I think just a diesel exhaust, something, you know, the oils in the exhaust landed on here and caused that issue. So not a huge deal, just gonna cost us 1 more day. Gotta let it cure up, sand it flat, and then probably do 2 more coats and see how it looks then. Well, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, guys. I did 2 more coats and you can see it kind of did the same thing. It's not laying flat at all. It's kind of weird. The first coat laid out pretty good, but then the second coat did that. And I also did this little piece that I cut out just for kicks, but you can see all the fish eyes in it. So I'm not really sure what's going on. I think the game plan, I'm just gonna sand this out with 220 grit, kind of flatten it out, do 1 more coat. Hopefully that'll lay out flat, and then I'm gonna clear coat it. Well, it's a little bit better this time. I think it's just was so messed up from before. It's not really gonna lay out that good. So I don't know, it's looking a little bit better. We got 1 coat on there. So I think I'm done screwing with this stuff, trying to get it perfect. Like I said, it's my first time doing it. So all in all, I think it'll turn out fine once we get a clear coat on it. But if you guys are into this kind of stuff and have any ideas what could be going on, feel free to drop a comment and let me know. I did post on a like a composite Facebook page. Everybody's saying your stuff is dirty, it's contaminated with oil or grease. You guys know me, I am very particular, I'm very clean. This stuff I tried isopropyl alcohol, I tried acetone, I tried just the regular Prep All degreaser or the Prep All cleaner, and it did it no matter what. It seems like the first coat lays out better, but as soon as I put the second coat on, it just fish eyes everywhere. So like I said, I'm not sure what's going on. What we're gonna do is let this totally cure up 100%, probably give it 2 days to completely cure, and then we'll sand it flat and just do, like I said, a regular automotive clear coat on it. All right, guys, I think I know what is going on with this epoxy. So yesterday morning, probably 11 o'clock, I put 1 coat on, 1 thin coat of epoxy, and I came out here at like probably 9 o'clock and it was still tacky. It should have been completely hard by then. In the cup it was completely hard, and even like on the cardboard I brushed a little bit on, it was completely hard, but on the parts it wasn't hardening up. So I think what's going on, I think I'm just putting on too much epoxy. Like I'm not waiting long enough for it to cure before I go and sand it and put more on. I think that's what's going on. I'm gonna let this stuff cure up for I'm gonna give it like 2 days before I even touch it. I might sand it just to open it up and then let it sit out, but I think that's what's going on. It's just not hardening up, and as every time I put more on, it's taking longer to harden up. So I'm gonna give it, like I said, a couple days. In the meantime, we gotta build all the brackets for the radio. So we're gonna take this thing, we're gonna bolt it into the dash. I already got the holes drilled in this, so we're just gonna bolt it in and build all the brackets to mount the radio up. And then, like I said, once that's done in a couple days, we'll sand this thing flat and give it a clear coat. All right, so I started making these mounts. I was gonna make them out of steel, weld them in here, and then bolt them to here, until I realized this is gonna be way too fast, way too easy to just slide that bracket down and bolt it through the actual carbon fiber plate there. And I got some of these nice looking button head Allens I'm gonna put on the front, and honestly, I think it'll look really good. And it's gonna take about 3 minutes instead of doing a bunch of welding and all that stuff. So I'm just gonna take the easy route on this one. Honestly, like I said, I do like the look of these little Allens, so I think it'll look pretty sweet. So let's just drill a few holes in here, a few holes there, and we should be good to go. We'll just mount that up and we'll be done. Well, there we go, got that mounted up, and honestly, like I said, I like it with those little Allens. Like I said, now it's kind of just a waiting game. I want to let that carbon completely 100% cure before I go and put more clear coat on top of it. All right, we got these sanded out. I didn't want to go too far. You can see there's still some low spots in it, but I hope at least the clear will kind of hide that with maybe just a little bit of orange peel with the clear. It might kind of fade that in. So I just didn't want to go too deep and start digging into the actual fiber. That really screws it up. So it's all cleaned up. I also got the little test piece here. I'm gonna spray that first. You can see I sanded that a little bit less. So I'm gonna throw a coat of clear on that, kind of see how that's looking. If it really doesn't look good, I may not move on and paint that, but good thing we got a test piece here. So let's mix up some clear coat and hose it on, see how this will look. I'm hoping, really hoping it turns out. Hey, that doesn't look so bad compared to how bad we screwed this thing up. I'm actually really happy with how it turned out. There's a couple little imperfections that you can kind of see here and there, maybe a little bit of dimples up in that area, but honestly, for what it is and my first try, I would say we got a win. I'm happy with it. I think that is gonna work. So this clear is still pretty tacky, so we're gonna give that a couple days to kind of harden up, but all in all, I'm actually really happy with how it turned out with having some clear coat on it. So I did 2 coats of Omni Clear, and like I said, actually looks pretty good. Well guys, what a roller coaster ride it has been trying to get this bezel to look good. Finally happy with it. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect, but it's definitely good enough and it's definitely gonna do the job. Now, like I said, this was my first try at carbon fiber. If you guys have any tips, any tricks for me, anything that you saw that I did wrong, if you are familiar with doing this kind of work, feel free to drop a comment down below. Let me know. I got more carbon fiber stuff I want to build for this truck, so I kind of want to get this figured out, and I don't want to take a week and a half. Yeah, this thing took me a week and a half to build. That's why this video is taking so long to get out. So I apologize for it, but we finally got this thing done. Finally looking okay. So we're gonna let it harden up and then we can get this thing back together and start on some other stuff on this interior. Well, that is a wrap for this one, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. Go smash that thumbs up button, comment, subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.